Hello and welcome. This is Benevolent History here, and I'm here to give you another tactics video. This time I'll be talking about specific unit compositions. I already gone through all the factions essentially. Now I'm going to use the Seleucid Empire as my example because they have the most unit diversity. Anyway, let's see. Well, first you should know. Let's begin off with the weakest guy. First, you should know that there's the peasant unit, and obviously the peasant unit is the weakest unit in the game, and you should know that you should only bring a peasant unit if really you want to use that peasant unit to soak up missiles and whatnot. These guys can also soak up pillar, and they could also block horse archers. Actually, you just need to protect these guys. If you're trying to use them to block horse archers. Now, I guess now we'll begin with the lesser pikeman units. Seleucid, remember that Seleucid is just an example, so other examples can include Macedon's levy pikemen or militia hoplites, Greek militia hoplites and whatnot. Now these lesser pikemen, they're really only good in numbers, obviously. They could also be used to soak up missiles as well, although they're more expensive than peasants. And peasants will get the job done better, except these guys will last longer, essentially, because these guys has generally better morale. I believe so anyway. And now you have regular pikemen units, including silver shield pikemen. There's also there's also royal pikemen or bronze shield pikemen, and I also include phalanx pikemen in the mix. Pikemen in general are very good against cav, obviously. You should use them possibly in or at least try to use them to help out in a cavalry on cavalry engagement. These pikemen also counter chariots, as you can see there, because pikemen, when they have the pikes down and chariots run in front of the pikes, the chariots will instantly die no matter how much HP they have. Basically, the difference between pikemen and hoplites, I believe the Greek hoplites, Greek or Carthaginian hoplites, you can see here. In general, pikemen are weaker than hoplites, and except the pikemen have more men per unit, and these guys have saristas, which are very long spears. However, you should realize that in Rome Total War, at least the game, these so-called very long spears do not have that much of an advantage over these armored hoplites and sacred band hoplites of Carthage. I think this is mainly because pikemen in general have very, very low stats. I mean, even the royal pikeman that has a huge shield, Macedon's royal pikemen, they even if they have big shields, they have very low defense nonetheless. I mean, they could kind of counter missile fire from the front, but royal pikemen will obviously die as quickly as peasants, essentially, if they're shot from behind. Because these pikemen have very low defense. They also have silver shield pikemen, phalanx pikemen, and the bronze shield pikemen also have very small shields, which are like 2, maybe 3 defense, not very much. And now you can see the silver shield legionaries. Well, I think urban cohorts are better. I think urban cohorts are a better example of sword-armed infantry. Basically, sword-armed infantry, they're basically they're really good against phalanx units, especially the urban court, because the urban court has beastly stats, has so much attack, so much defense that it could take on a phalanx head on and totally defeat the phalanx. Now that's not very realistic, but this game isn't about realistic. This video and this game isn't about how realistic these units are, but oh well, you can see it. The urban courts are very tough units. They could take out any infantry unit in the game essentially. However, the urban court's weakness is the fact that these guys, first of all, the infantry units, so they're very slow, and second of all, they're very susceptible to chariots or cav strikes. This is most likely because these guys don't have a phalanx, and if they don't have a phalanx, they can't truly defend themselves against cavalry attacks or chariot attacks, because the only way for these guys to kill cavalry or chariots is if the cavalry or chariots actually go inside and have a melee engagement. And most players are smart enough to realize that in a melee engagement, the urban courts will win against basically any unit, except possibly the cataphracts, because the cataphracts have maces. And now we also have the javelin ranged units. These guys in general, in my opinion, you should never use these guys, because first of all, these guys are more expensive than regular archers. See there, at least the Roman javelin range units are pretty expensive. These guys are not worth bringing, in my opinion. The only javelin ranged unit I can think of right now that's worth bringing are these head hurlers. I already mentioned in my last video, these guys have beastly attack. You can see 20 missile attack, and these guys pierce armor, so they'll totally slaughter any infantry, possibly even cataphracts, if they get the attack. And now next we have the regular archer units. Now the regular archer units, they're like the whole point of Rome Total War. These archers are like, let's say these archers are probably like the most cost-effective unit in the game. These guys can destroy any infantry unit if given the chance. I mean, if your opponent brought predominantly infantry, these guys can, first of all, they could run away from infantry. They are faster than infantry. And second of all, these guys can easily surround and shoot missiles at the enemy. And in Rome Total War, at least, the archers are very powerful. You should truly invest money in archers. You will not go any. The golden rule is basically just bring archers, bring the maximum amount of archers. That's basically the golden rule. And I also would suggest people bring archers, especially if you're new to the game, because if you learn how to use archers correctly, that could easily make or break your battle. Now we have long range archers. Well, first of all, these guys have long range. Examples include the Archer Auxilia, as you see here, Cretan archers, Pharaoh's bowmen, even Forester warbands and Chosen Archer warbands. Now all these guys have long range. That's the whole point for the use. So because they have long range, the best way to use them is just to upgrade them really to gold attack. That's because that's really as much upgrade they need, because these guys since these guys have long range, it's best to keep them away from regular archer fire. So if your opponent brings regular archers and send them in to attack these Archer Auxilia or any other long range archer, just retreat your Archer Auxilia or long range archers behind your regular archers. I don't suggest just bringing predominantly long-range archers because these guys use up the ammunition very quickly, and because these guys fire faster. So it's best at a max to bring just 4 archer auxilia. If you want to bring a lot of long-range archers, the best you could do is probably half and half, though it's probably best to bring 6 regular archers and 2 long-range archers. And now we have guess we have let's see, cavalry units. Well, the basically 2 types of cav: light cav and heavy cav. I'll show you light cav here. The 2 examples of light cav in general. You have javelin armed cav. Or keep in mind, these javelin armed cav are not horse archers. They're not considered horse archers. So you're allowed to bring more than 2 of them in CWB rules. Anyway, these javelin armed cav are very easy to use. Very good light cav. I suggest if you're using light cav, it's best to bring these javelin armed cav. The only downside to these guys is that they generally have lower attack and lower defense. Now these then we have light cav units, the regular light cav. These guys don't throw javelins, and however these light cav can hunt down archers more easily because these guys have generally better stats than javelin armed cav. I should also mention that these javelin armed cav have skirmish mode on, so it's easy to micromanage them. I also forgot horse archer units. These horse archer units are very cost-effective units. They're very tough. They could these horse archer units are basically used essentially to maximize the amount of casualties you could do onto your opponent before the main battle begins, because usually in the beginning of the battle people send out the horse archers first, so that these horse archers can deal a lot of damage before the main battle comes. So this gives the horse archer user the advantage when it comes to the skirmish phase. I should also know that you should also know that these guys can form Cantabrian Circle, and that's basically the whole use of horse archers, just to send them in, attack the enemy units. Most of the time you should attack regular archers and put these guys in Cantabrian Circle, and thus in Cantabrian Circle they could easily dodge archers. They essentially become arrow proof after they go into Cantabrian Circle, because the archers will basically miss every shot. Oh yes, I forgot about one thing. There's also the slinger units here. There's 2 types of slingers, regular slingers and long-range slingers. The so-called long-range slingers are Balearic slingers and Rhodian slingers. Now these guys are pretty expensive, but they're really good actually. These guys will totally decimate chariots. These guys will also decimate cavalry if you get the chance to hit the cavalry units. However, against cataphracts, these guys won't do much, obviously. But these Balearic slingers, they have the range of regular archers, I believe, and these guys have so much missile attack. These guys are just awesome. These long-range slingers are also pretty effective against horse archers or chariot archers because of the arc that they fire is lower than the so-called arrows. Now these regular slingers, these guys are pretty weak missile units essentially. In a one-on-one fight, the slingers will win against regular archers. However, these slingers have less range than regular archers, so this leaves them very vulnerable to cav strikes and infantry attacks, because these guys have to move closer to the enemy lines in order to get in range with the regular archers. And if your opponent is smart enough, if you're the archer using opponent, if the opponent using archers is smart enough, they will actually send up the infantry to push up and basically displace your slingers, so that your slingers cannot fire at their archers, but their archers can fire at your slingers. Keep in mind that slingers also don't have the flame arrow ability, so against side chariots, these guys are not as good. Now I guess we're going on to heavy cav. Now basically heavy cav, most of you probably know the usage of heavy cav already. Essentially, heavy cav is basically one of the best things that you could bring. It's very good to invest in a lot of these heavy cav, because cavalry units in this game basically win over infantry units. They win over archer units in general. Okay, so since the light cav are used mainly for hunting archers or hunting down routing units, you should use these heavy cav, any Praetorian cav, companion cav, Cappadocian cav, or cataphracts, or maybe even sacred band. You should send these guys into like the melee, possibly do hammer and anvil strikes, although that's pretty rare online in competitive play in so-called because of the heavily reliance on skirmish armies. But these heavy cav, they will totally decimate any other unit in the game. So the most important cav units in the game, I would say, are these Praetorian cav. That's one of the important units in the game. These guys, really good cav units. They are second only to the cataphracts. You should also realize that companion cav are pretty decent cav. These guys are okay. The only real good thing about them is that they have a big charge bonus. And then we have the extremely powerful cataphract units. Now these cataphract units, they are expensive. Yes, gold upgraded, they cost over 1,600, almost 1,700. Yet you should know that these cataphracts will decimate any heavy cav unit in the game, any infantry unit in the game, essentially. These guys should only be used to counter any other heavy cav or to defeat your opponent's infantry. These guys are not, you should never use these guys to chase down archers in the main rush, in the main melee engagement. That's what your light cav is for. Remember, so light cav for chasing down soft targets, heavy cav for eliminating and dealing the death blow to your opponent's infantry and melee units. Now we have, I guess we could name the interesting units like camels. In my opinion, the only real camels that you should bring are either cataphract camels of Parthia, or if you're in Numidia, you could bring some of these Numidian camel riders. So first of all, the camels, they obviously they beat horses in general, and the camels basically scares horses because historically speaking, horses did not like the smell of camels. So you should know that. However, camels are really slow, and at least for the Numidian camel riders, cannot go into wedge. These cataphract camels can go into wedge, however, so keep that in mind. I should also realize that the cataphract camels, really tough units. Okay, gonna give you a little bit of advice with Parthia here in general, because cataphract camels are exclusive to Parthia. You should really only use cataphract camels when you're up against other cataphracts, and because cataphract camels in general are better than cataphracts. So you should not bring 6 cataphract camels, so to speak, against, let's say, Macedon, because it's no use. Because you're gonna have the infantry. I mean, you're gonna have the cavalry superiority anyway if you use regular cataphracts, because the regular cataphracts are faster than cataphract camels, and the cataphract camels are also more cumbersome. They take up more space, and they're more difficult to use. So cataphract camels, only bring them in large numbers if you're up against other cataphracts. Like, let's say you're up against another faction that uses cataphracts, like the Seleucids or the Armenians. How you should really only use, however, against any other opponent, it's just best to use regular cataphracts. Now, what else do we have? Oh yeah, I forgot these chariot units. Now there's 3 types of chariots in the game. Well, 3 types of melee chariots in the game that you should know about. You should keep in mind. You have these side chariot units, and these guys are really pretty cheap, but pretty, well, not really cheap. They cost like 1k each, but these guys are very useful units. I mean, they have pretty high attack. They have 4 hit points each, and these guys will totally decimate any cavalry component your enemy has. However, these guys, at least for the side chariot weakness is the fact that these guys will run amok eventually. In other words, they will get to a certain point in which the morale drops low enough, in which they just panic and run around in circles. It's similar to routing, except these guys will damage your own troops if they run amok. Now, how do they run amok? Well, first of all, you could just drop down the morale, surround them, and the other way is to make them run amok is to flame them, so to speak, with archers. Put the archers on flaming missiles and fire at the side chariot unit. And whenever your opponent uses these side chariots and they're in range of your regular archers or your long range archers, immediately target them, because these guys are a target or opportunity, because these guys cost so much money and they're such useful units. Now, side chariots also lose out, obviously, to phalanx units. You can see here, like bronze shields and whatnot. And I guess these guys are probably the easiest chariots to counter because they could run amok. Oh yeah, I forgot. So the way to use these side chariots is basically to hold them back until your opponent loses his archer force, and then send them in. You don't want to send these guys in generally when your opponent still has archers, because these guys will get flamed and will run amok very quickly. Now let's see. There are also 2 other units of chariots that you should know. Egyptian chariots, for example. You can see here. These guys are pretty weak chariots, but they're really cheap chariots. Weak and cheap, but these guys will get the job done. They will basically decimate any cav force, first of all. So against cavalry, against cataphracts and whatnot, these Egyptian chariots will generally win. Let's see. A good thing about these Egyptian chariots is the fact that they do not run amok, because the side chariot unit is the only chariot that runs amok with flame arrows. However, these chariot units, as with all chariot units, are still hopelessly vulnerable to missiles. If you leave these guys still and your opponent shoots them with archers or any other missile unit, these chariots will fall because they really have very low defense. The only thing that keeps these chariots alive are the hit points that they have. You can see here that the Egyptian chariot has 3 hit points. You should know that the side chariot has 4 hit points, and the other one, the Britannia Barbarian Warlord, has 5 hit points. now let's go to the Barbarian Warlord. Well, first of all, these guys are the best chariot units in the game. They will totally eliminate other chariot units, and they will eliminate other cav units. I'm sure you know that by now. Chariot units always win against cav units. Well, not always, but most of the time. And these guys, like the Egyptian chariots, they can outrun amok. However, they're still hopelessly vulnerable to missiles, so keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that these chariots will still die instantly against a phalanx. I guess the next step are these these British light chariots, well, or chariot archers. These chariot archers, they're basically like horse archers, except I find that these chariot archers are much more slower to use. I find these guys slower. They still have the special attack, so to speak, of the chariots, because these guys still have spikes attached to the wheels. Although you won't see the spikes attached to the wheels on the Pontic side, on the Pontic chariot archer, although it's still there. You won't see the blades on the side of the wheels for the Pontic chariot archer, but they still have it. Keep it in mind, the game recognizes that they have it. It's just that the game doesn't show it. And these chariot archers, you use them just like horse archers, except these guys are slower, so it's best to protect them in the chariot archer, in the horse archer fight. I guess next will be regular barbarian infantry. First of all, I think I should mention the Berserker. The Berserker is exclusive to Germania. These guys will totally decimate urban cohorts if you could get these guys in. Well, will decimate any sword-armed infantry unit in the game. However, these guys are vulnerable to missiles, they're vulnerable to cav strikes, they're vulnerable to phalanxes, so these guys only used in certain situations against basically Rome, but in general you should really not use these guys against, or at least head on against phalanx units, because these guys will get slaughtered. Now I guess as a sum up, I could say which beats which. You should know that the sword-armed infantry, urban cohorts, for example, defeat hoplites in general. At least the urban cohorts defeat hoplites or any other phalanx unit in the game. However, the phalanx units can easily kill chariots. However, the chariots, although they cannot be phalanx units, the chariots can be urban cohorts. So it's kind of like a triangle. Urban cohorts beat phalanx units beat chariots or cav units beat urban cohorts. I guess that's the general triangle, I would say. There's also a little bit of a chariots obviously beats the cavalry units, but still it's the cavalry units make up for that, for the fact that cavalry units are more effective against phalanx units than chariots are. So it's all about so even though this game you see horribly unbalanced, there are a few balancing purposes of it because people have played this game for so long. I guess the archer units are like in between. Archer units can eliminate both chariots. They can eliminate cav if they're well protected. They can eliminate phalanx units, and they can eliminate infantry. However, the archer units are still very vulnerable to all three if they get into a melee engagement with them. So I guess that's basically my ranting about the general unit compositions. there are a few units I haven't gone over yet, like the median legionaries, the heavy spearmen, or the barbarian infantry. Generally, what you bring depends on your faction. In that case, let's say if you're playing as Germania, you'll obviously bring infantry units, because you obviously bring infantry units like spear warbands, knight raiders, or chosen axemen, because that's your specialist units. And if you're Numidia or Armenia, you'll obviously bring the Numidian legionaries or the heavy spearmen. So I guess that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed watching my ranting about the unit compositions. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you comment, subscribe, dislike, or like it, and see you later.